hearing, an international audience hearing about what has taken place, but from an individual who is sympathetic, charismatic, somebody who they can relate to. Oh, that's a grandmother Lukashevka, but she's kind of like my grandmother. It has the potential that they'll then say, you know, I need to think further about this. And so it's not, so I'm hoping that their stories and their faces shared in media, such as the stuff that Bill and I do in terms of short documentaries, that may help people outside understand in greater detail what is taking place, will provide them a greater awareness, and maybe they'll vote Trump out of office and we'll have better days.
So you mean more qualitative research?
Sorry?
You mean more qualitative research?
No, not political research.
Not qualitative.
Better quality.
No, I mean not quantitative methods, but qualitative methods.
I quite understand.
More in-depth interview.
Yes, but it's not just more interviews, because you could go interview a politician and you can get a more detailed interview with more material, and it can be dry and boring. I think the only way for people to, in an international context, understand what's going on in Ukraine is for them to see somebody's eyes, see somebody's face, to think about what it means when a small village, somebody living in a small village where their 200-year-old church has been destroyed. Now that's not going to protect the Bronze Age site directly, but it will mean that more people internationally will say, oh, Ukrainian heritage and culture, whether you're talking about music, whether you're talking about art, whatever you think, that those are targets, and that they will be able to empathize with the person on the screen, connect with them, and then maybe they'll say, it's not just about this 200-year-old church, there's other things, like the Bronze Age sites or other things. So it's
emotional response.
It's an emotional response, and it's a baby step towards bringing some changes.
It's about not only heritage sites, but also about verbal heritage and about psychological trauma. How local people feel when their church were bombed. Social anthropology.
Yeah, but
it's
there is
a memory. It's a memory words.
But there is a method for gathering such testimonies, and it is.
У нас, до речі, є проведено достатньо класне дослідження етнографами на території Чернігівської області. Вони випустили книгу «Чернігів у вогні», 25 історій одразу після окупації. Така Світлана Маховська працює, де це закрестя Кам'янець. Вона проводила інтерв'ю з людьми, 25 людей, які були там в окупації, а зараз вони працюють над наступною книгою «Київщина». І вони закінчують вже, вони закінчили об'їзди, зараз формують книгу, вони питали за 27 людей з Київщини, Іванківської і так далі, які були в окупації, саме щоб записати, це не документалістика, не прямі дії, а просто записати відчуття людей, що вони відчували, як екологічно чували.
Should we talk about something what's hard to talk about? Should we tell about the problems outside, or we should leave them inside of Ukraine? Should we tell about the stories that Ukrainian military also dig on some sites, or we should leave it inside Ukraine like hide them? From your perspective, but how it will look outside if we will say that we are adults and we know that we have problems and we talk about the problems, or we should act like children hiding them?
Зараз ми співпрацюємо зі Смітсонівським інститутом, який допоміг нам якраз закупкою, виділяє кошти на ці поїздки невеликі, але
that Ukrainian militaries digged some trenches on sites, or should it
Besides the center,
like
it's
this?
You go first.
Я хотів просто сказати, що Ваня, все дуже просто. За всіма конвенціями всі руйнації на совісті агресора.
Ні. Нації, які роблять наші солдати всередині країни, не на лінії.
Все одно.
Вона ж має бути
Причина агресія.
За всіма конвенціями в нас мав бути загін, який слідкує за цим ще в 2014-му. Його не було, і хто в цьому винен? Мабуть, ми, що ми його створили. Тобто це наша відповідальність, що у нас дійсно не було кому цим займатися.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
My answer to that question is, no, we can't vary. We can't vary in terms of the Ukrainian military is having an impact on culture history. In terms of our culture. We have to acknowledge it, but more importantly, we have to acknowledge that their decision-making is based on military strategy to protect the country. And they are responding to Russian aggression. They are so they're digging trenches in some cases. I don't know. It's complicated. It's complicated. We have to be open about it, but we have to recognize that it's the big brother to the north, should we say, is causing the problem.
Там ще була рука.
Я хотів сказати, до Івана, також що частково українські військові за щось не відповідають. Але військові – це не окрема каста населення, це зріз суспільства України. І проблема в тому, що в нас існує дві певні умовні ідеології. Одна, яка націлена на культурну, спадщину і збереженість. І вона чомусь у нас працює тільки чомусь останнім часом з Другою світовою війною на Західній Україні, частково з Першої світової війни і з етнографією, які були красиві горщики, які були класні вишиванки. Але коли ми говоримо про щось давніше, вплітається зовсім інша ідеологія, яка пов'язана з якимось дивним лібертаріанством. Це моя територія. Я оце накопав, це моє. Ось я хочу так. І це люди говорять постійно. Більше так, це існує. На вищих рівнях, це існує на адміністративних рівнях, коли ти сам знаєш ситуацію з Китаєм і як ці забудовники виправдовують себе. Так це ж наш бізнес, треба робити.
Є інвестори, які втрачають робочі місця.
Але це також існує і на рівні громадянського суспільства. Я ніколи не зможу забути ситуацію з таким проєктом, як Україна, до війни, коли вони спокійно собі випускали випуски, один був десь в Азові, коли мужик накопав скіфський стіл і зробив собі в підвалі музей приватний, каже, це моє. І вони це подають, як це життя на війні, людина сама це зробила. Те саме інший був якийсь високий митець в Парохиному, який натерив каміння, натерив якихось стел із Ольвії, натерив якихось плечик із Ольвії, і це все повиставлялося на світу, зробив з цього арт-об'єкт. І це не 19 сторіччя, це ось. І ці люди і далі продовжують це робити. І от проблема в тому, що наша чомусь культурна спадщина, і вся державна така впливова машина інформаційного впливу, скажімо так, вона працює чомусь на недавню нашу історію, а все інша державна впливова інфомашина чомусь працює на те, що це моє, ось ти це зробив, ти молодець. І всім до одного місця вибачте питання із спадщиною, і з тим, що якісь не то, що загальні, це не загальнонаціональні інтереси, загальносвітові інтереси. І от, мабуть, є сенс працювати не тільки з військовим, тому що ти розповів 10 військовим, але через рік цих 10 військових може вже на цих позиціях не бути. Вони будуть десь поранені, не дай Бог, чи не дай Бог ще щось гірше. А люди, які нові прийдуть на їхні місця, вони будуть продовжувати робити те, що вони звикли робити. І цей зріз суспільства потрібно робити не тільки для військових і серед військових. Потрібно якось, я навіть не уявляю, як це робити, тому що достукатися до державних структур, достукатися до Міністерства культури чи ще дуже важко, особливо в плані того, щоб якось впливати на це.
Насправді я зараз погоджуюся
велике прохання. Справа в тому, що дискусію про наші перипетії між адміністративними, скажімо, щаблями, громадськими організаціями, науковими установами. Це дискусія вічна, вона триває практично постійно, починаючи там ще з дуже давніх часів. Але насправді ми можемо окремо зібрати, щоб проговорити ці проблеми. Тобто це не проблема, ми можемо постійно збиратися хоч щотижня для того, щоб дискутувати ці речі. У нас зараз конкретно є гості, які приїхали і дивились очами ззовні на наші проблеми. І я б хотів би, щоб ви більше акцентували увагу і питання до, безумовно, гостей. Настя, добре, я бачу.
I have a question for our dear guest because we talked about creating these videos, interviews of citizens who can we have some empathy for. But actually, in this political context, especially in your political context, do your people, your citizens in North America, have spare empathy? Because you said that we have now follows the internet, and we see sad videos every day. From every context, from Middle East, from Ukraine, from other contexts. How can we differentiate ourselves so you can see us, actually us, and care about us?
There's one of the problems right off is that there's a desensitization. There is donor fatigue, should we say. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the Near East or Ukraine. On an international level, it is hard to direct attention to those kinds of things. I don't know what the answer is. I really don't.
You said to me today when we were walking, my friends are either in the military or they're dead. And it's things like that. And I have a student who can't say that, and then they go, oh my God, this is a reality. So we've talked to that's why we're trying to actually stick with when we were at Ukrainian Catholic University, talking to young people and asking them questions of their experience, and they had some of the similar answers. Like I don't go to the disco with my friends. I go visit them in the cemetery. And sort of like it's these sort of statements that I'm hoping can be it's not. You talk about empathy, but it's sort of making it relational, making it kind of connectedness, like because America doesn't know anything about war on its own borders. It's been like 9/11, Pearl Harbor, maybe domestic terrorism and the Oklahoma City bombing, and now it's like all these other small spots, but nothing like that, and it's over there. So now it's like this is how you live your lives. So when we say, we're in a classroom, and then suddenly it's, okay, we all have to get up and leave. People just don't live like that. And I think what people like, I read a lot of things. I mean, I see like in the New York Times will do stories of people getting together in basements and encouraging arts and having this kind of hope and doing those kinds of things. The news tends to gravitate towards, what's happening down in the front. And so that's, I guess, you tell me, what would be a better way? I mean, mine's like, it doesn't need to be sad all the time, and it can be, uplifting, but yeah.
Я хотів би задати дивіться, ви питаєте у гостей, чи є там Іспанія на території США, де це мешканців. Авторовому серед американців, велика країна, там різні погляди, не всі знають, що таке Україна. Давайте на себе звернемо. До 22 року ви часто звертали увагу на те, що там відбувається, наприклад, на території, яка входить зараз, яка колись була фертар Речень, тобто цей трикутник, поплаваючи на півмісяць. Територія Ливану, Сирії, Ірака, Газа. Там буквально нещодавно інформації багато з'явилося про те, що в Газі велика кількість атомічних електрозв'язків. Тобто емпатія є якась. От це просто відповідь на ваше питання.
дуже обмежене коло людей цікавиться цими речами, розумієте? Вимагати якогось симпатії, ну не вимагати, що вимагати просто питається, чи нам це навіщо. Але просто треба думати, я думаю, що як тільки закінчиться ця війна, я думаю, багато людей в Україні переосмислять все, що відбувалося, і будуть також звертати увагу на те, що відбувається в інших країнах. М'язи, там, в Пакистані, ще десь. Купа археологічних пам'яток подивиться. Купа науковців, згадайте того ж самого хранителя пам'ятів у ICIS Олу просто відбувало. Да, таке трапляється. Емпатія має бути в різні сторони.
Обопільною. Обопільною.
Скажіть, будь ласка, питання було ще про алгоритми. I also asked about like, the algorithm because the internet is not just our wish, what we want to see, but it's also how it's how information goes to us. So sometimes we want to see some prophetic things, the information, we want to see information, but sometimes it doesn't get to us just because of the algorithm. Because the media, it just doesn't create information and provides us the information. It's also the company which gives this information and pushes the information through the like recommendations and everything like that. So it's interesting, does the information reach you? Or is it just if you want to personally to discover this topic, you can see the information about Ukraine? Like, maybe not even in Europe, because yes, I think I'm sure that you see information about Ukraine, but maybe for your other colleagues who doesn't speak to Ukraine, that's what may know.
Okay, let me say something very bad. And that is, and I say this as a Canadian who's also an American citizen, but grew up in Canada and came to the States. People in Canada and North America, younger people especially at the age of 25, are remarkably insulated. They look into their country with a very poor awareness of what's going on in terms of the world, in terms of geography. They are sitting there looking into their world in a way that empathy, these are nice individuals who will pet dogs and are good people and are moral creatures, but they're not necessarily aware of the world around them. And it is at times very frustrating because they don't even protest. Like the university we're at here, where we work, they're not protesting what's going on in terms of the administration, in terms of Trump, in terms of what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in terms of Ukraine. It's like, yeah, let's watch another TikTok or something similar. Now, I know that sounds really shallow, and that sounds really lacking generosity to some really nice students, but they're not engaged and interested in the world around them.
Say that in general. I mean, I like to think that our university, having seen what happens at other ones, is that we do have a push for global interaction, a lot of global programs, a lot of, although, you know, students will go to London and we just sort of stay in London and have fun. But we also do have master's programs in the Human Institute and things of that nature. And one of the, I think, primary slogans is be a force for good. And so, you know, as opposed to making money, which is actually very prevalent in a lot of the other Ivy League schools. So, you know, you just chip away as much as you can, you know, little by little, I guess.
You've been very patient.
I'm really patient, I'm trying. Yeah, I have lots of patience, and I'd like to thank you for coming to Ukraine and for 3 times, right? To both of you professors, and also for caring about Ukraine, and also for your lecture about the skulls, because it's fascinating that how much of a tremendous effort you put into like studying each and every step and each and every hypothesis of what it would mean for the archaeology of this region. And I have 2 small questions. The first one is regarding like, if we see before the war between the Russia and Ukraine, we see that in the academia, in the North America, in the US, we see that a lot of academics, they don't pay attention too much to the Ukraine and Russia, and they, like, if you ask them like, what's the difference, they might say that
I'm not even talking about the general public, I'm just talking about the academia. Like they just confuse what is the Soviet Union, Russia, Ukraine, like it's all like Russia for Germany, Nazis, and like Ukraine, where's Ukraine? They didn't know much about that region. And my question is, how would you see that your colleagues in the US, how their perception changed throughout those 3 years of like the culture perception, the culture difference between Ukrainian and Russians, maybe how they saw it in the beginning of the war and now. And the second question is maybe...
Can we respond to that question first?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Yeah.
Because otherwise we'll end up with 10 questions.
Yeah, I'm trying to be really good. Yeah.
My short answer to that is I think people are starting to get it. They're starting to understand in the North American context that they're breaking down this monolithic sense of Russia, and they're understanding that there's a sovereign nation with its own culture, language, history, identity, music, etc., called Ukraine. I think they're starting to get it in terms of professional individuals. And my hope is that that's going to trickle down.
Ironically, the things that our president, or the president of the United States, we want to say our president, the things that he says about the situation become so absurd that the pushback, the publicity pushback is, well, that's ridiculous. That's not what happened. And I think then the talk starts to spur from there. I mean, even within our own university, when we fight pretty hard to get here, we were told no the first time, and then finally fought back and told yes, and then pushed the limits of that a little further, and now they've been like, okay, yes, you go, don't tell us anymore, kind of thing. So, you know, there has been a progression. I think we kind of laid the groundwork for that, because there's still resistance. You know, I'll still get people asking, you know, where are you going, and how, you know, it's important. So in some ways, you know, there is a different awareness just because of the madness of the talks and things like that. So more people are aware of it as a different, bigger thing than, you know, this war that's just kind of still happening over there.
I think they are starting to get it. I'm cautiously optimistic about that. What's your second question? Because you've earned it with your patience.
Thank you for your remark, yeah. And the second question is that I guess Ukrainian archaeology has a long way to go to reach even like halfway to what's going on in America, in Europe, because we have our finance and our level of finance that we got into archaeology. It's just great slower than in America. And what would you say that is the biggest difference? Because you communicated with many researchers in our university in terms of archaeology. What's the biggest difference between the academia in the US and in Ukraine, in Ukrainian universities? Yeah.
I would have given you a very different answer on January 19th as opposed to now. So unfortunately, you're totally correct in terms of the differential funding and the recognition formally in terms of law about how culture, history, heritage is dealt with. There are, if you put a road development in areas of the United States, you have to do an archaeological survey. And it's not like somebody's going to push the button in 4 years with a new president and there's going to be funding. So, I don't know what good counsel I could pass on, because in the context of the United States, it is absolute damage control and chaos at this point in terms of culture research.
That even here in Ukraine we have an impact of Trump politics, so even here in our expert council of university used the term such as effect of Trump. And in fact, Alexander told you about the cases in Ukrainian archaeology which really connected with the situation in USA. About Ukrainian and about archaic
Almost all non-governmental organizations were on American aid, actually, and everything was connected with cultural heritage. Actually, government can't pay the amount of money needed for work to the researchers, to the cultural heritage specialists, so they were all on grants, and usually it was American grants, and a lot of nice initiatives were stopped. So yeah, it's a big impact. But I think the question was, how do you see the problem in Ukrainian archaeology? How the Ukrainian archaeology is different from American and European archaeology? How many years we need to grow to that?
Well,
It was a question. I guess it was a
Yeah, yeah.
question.
Yeah, it's kind of in that
Okay.
direction.
So this comes